Everybody is going to vote no matter what your body temperature is. Even
Exactly.
if it's close to room temperature, you're voting. When I first moved to Florida, and I forget, like I passed by a nursing home, okay? A nursing home. And there was a polling station in the nursing home. And I'm like, wait, like, so it's like they just set the Alzheimer's patients up and they say, like, I'm here to vote. Oh, but you voted already. Nah, I don't remember it. I'll vote again. You get them, you just keep them voting and voting early and often.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, we got lots to talk about this week with our good friend, John Rubino. As always, got a question, comment. Email is kl@kerrylutz.com. Make sure you leave your comments down below on the YouTube channel. Like, share, subscribe, and proselytize. That's our slogan. And, well, John, everything is about the Fed, right? So they didn't raise rates. They did a little pause, but they're not cutting rates. And now the 10 years going up. It looks like they have some wiggle room in the 2-year, right? The Fed funds rate is still above the 2-year. They can't let the 2-year go above the Fed's fund rate or the money gets drained from the system, right?
Hey, Kerry. Well, yeah, last week the Fed did a hawkish pause. They didn't raise rates, but they threatened to, again, at least once more this year, and then to keep rates higher for longer, at more or less this level or just a little bit below, for all of 2024, which is a pretty big deal because these are debilitating rates right now. And I think that the Fed doesn't yet get that because wages are going up and energy is up. So these two things are up. And the Fed is terrified of both of them. They don't want oil to go up above $100 a barrel. They don't want, for instance, the UAW strike to be settled on terms that are similar to the airline pilots or the UPS drivers, because that means several 100,000 people are suddenly making way more money than they were, which is inflation as the Fed defines it. So they're worried, and they're willing to be tighter for longer in order to choke wage inflation out of the system, which is, despicable on the one hand, but par for the course on the other. It's just how the monetary authorities operate. And that means they're going to keep things high enough to break something next year. That's basically what they got to do, because, wages are not going to start gently falling after all these successful strikes. So the only way to get wages back down to, 2% a year or zero, as the Fed would rather have it, is you got to break big sections of the economy, have them lay everybody off, and then have the wages of the people that are laid off drop dramatically because they have to go work at McDonald's or someplace like that. So that's what the Fed's trying for. And they will get, there's an interest rate that gives you that kind of a crisis. And it's conceivable that we're there already. So, right now, the 10-year Treasury is at 4.5%, which is the highest since 2007, which was right before the last gigantic financial crisis. So, we could easily see something like 2008, 2009, if these interest rates stay as high as they are right now. And it could be a lot worse because we're much more indebted now than we were then. So I think they're playing with fire. But of course, there's no chance of fixing things in any event. But what they're doing right now is risking a big crisis.
Hey, you know what the 30-year fixed is at today? According to...
Wait, let me guess. 7.4.
No. According to this, as of September 22nd, 2023, the 30-year fixed is, well, it's average rates. That's not giving me what I want. But it said 8%, but that covers every FICO score and everything else. But we can go to CNET and we can come up with that rate right now. And, it's like bank rate. They just give these rates, but it's well into the sevens. We can safely say that. Let's see what Investopedia says. 7.92% as of September 21. So rates went up on the 22nd. So it's over 8%. So that actually is correct.
So
yeah.
2 years ago, we were talking and we said, okay, what mortgage rate destroys the housing market? I think you and I would have both come in below the current rate, right? I would have said like
sure.
6.5% for sure.
Mhm.
And so, the housing market is already frozen. And what's
Except in
coming
Florida,
now?
because
Yeah,
there's no inventory. That's the
well,
paradox, right?
and you've got cash buyers coming in because people are fleeing their horrendous dictatorships like California and Illinois and Venezuela and Brazil. Well, okay, I can't call Brazil a dictatorship, but they've got issues. And so people are coming into South Florida with cash. But that's a rare thing right now. The rest of the country is not in that kind of a situation. And what's coming in normal real estate markets in the US is, first of all, Airbnb. There's going to be a deluge of Airbnb inventory from people who can't manage their rentals anymore and are going to have to sell them. And private equity is now net sellers. The investor demand for houses in most parts of the country has dried up. And
that's the Airbnb short-term rental market.
And it's the private equity guys coming in, buying up whole neighborhoods.
Yeah, sight unseen, institutional investor, right?
Yeah, but they're realizing that they did most of their buying at the very peak of the biggest real estate bubble in American history.
Yeah.
And it's maybe they can raise rents and generate cash flow this year, but they're going to be looking at massive capital losses going forward. So they're going to start selling to get out from under. And so where there's a shortage now, there's going to be a glut because of these mortgage rates. So that's what I'm talking about when I say the Fed's going to break something. Well, they're going to break the housing market, and that's how they're going to do it. Yeah.
The only reason, sales actually year to year, year on year in Florida are down, but there's no inventory because, like you were talking about, the people with the 3% mortgage who'd like to downsize, you can't, because if you're not paying cash, then your mortgage, your cost for half the house will be the same as what you're paying now for your big house. Nobody's downsizing for that, for sure. But there's definitely a lot of downward pressure. Look, oil is at $90 a barrel. When oil hits 100, in my opinion, from my experience, what we've seen over the past couple of decades, when it hits close to 100, it's a guaranteed recession,
Well, see, that's another thing. If 2 years ago, you and I were talking about which oil price blows up the market, I wouldn't have said 100. I would have said in the 80s probably. And now, yeah, we poked through 90, right? And it held that handle. I think it might be down today. I haven't checked, but I saw a headline.
89 and change, like 89.70 something. Yeah. So it's not meaningful.
Okay, but you still got kind of tight supply, reasonable demand at the moment, because a lot of people are driving to work and back, and that's supporting oil prices. So let's say they get one more impulse like we had in the last couple of months, and it breaks 100. Yeah, that's psychologically important and mathematically important. It makes everything way more expensive. So that presents the Fed with another dilemma, because $100 oil percolates through the economy. Everything that has to be delivered suddenly gets way more expensive because and so all of a sudden the Fed is looking at headline inflation, not core inflation, but headline inflation back in the 6% range or something like that. Can they ease monetary policy with headline inflation at 6%? No, they can't. So they got to stay tight. And
that's great.
And so all of these things are pointing towards something breaking because of excessively high interest rates, given our amount of financial leverage that we have right now. So
and let's not forget, while the West is raising interest rates, China is cutting interest rates. I don't think any discussion of the global economy and the economy at home is complete without a discussion of China's continuing economic implosion, which it gets worse by the day. Really bad there. Unemployment rate, youth unemployment rate heading to 50%. People Well, they have a foreclosure crisis that we don't know from, even from 08 and 09. Their foreclosure crisis is way, way more. They have 64 million vacant units and millions of units that are under construction that aren't being built, but that the purchaser still is responsible for the mortgage. So they got a strategic mortgage default taking place en masse. So all of that adds to cutting imports from the U.S. and from other countries, and their exports are in the toilet. So, for a lot of years, I think the Chinese illusion kept the whole global economy alive, but now that illusion's gone. How's that going to affect the United States and the West?
Well, yeah, it's important to understand that we had no way out of the Great Recession until China quintupled its total societal debt to buy all the raw materials that everybody else in the world had to sell. And that pulled the world out of that very deep recession. But it came at a cost. China blew up the biggest real estate bubble in human history. And now they've got insane amounts of debt and a bunch of really shoddy construction that's never really going to, generate cash flow of any kind. You probably watched those Peter Zion videos, right?
I watched a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah. His latest one on China is absolutely apocalyptic. He says that the demographics are terminal for China. They've flipped their their demographic pyramid upside down. So they have no more new young workers in the pipeline, or virtually none, and huge numbers of old people that have to be supported. And Chinese civilization is basically over. I mean, that's the gist of what he's saying. He's saying it's so bad that there won't even be a China as we think of it by 2035 or 2040. And that's a demographic description of a society in collapse. So we've got a short-term debt bubble blowing up on them right now. So it could be that the debt bubble blows up and they fight that for a couple of years, and then they tip over into this demographic abyss that they never recover from. So it's potentially a bigger story than just, they borrowed too much money on their real estate and now they're going to have a big recession. Could be much worse than that for China. And it's not clear what that does to the global economy, because they were the manufacturing floor of the globalized system. And what are we going to do without all that cheap Chinese crap at Walmart? I don't know how we'll get by.
I don't know, man. This could be retail apocalypse for the U.S., although they're shifting all the production to Vietnam. You go into clothing stores now. I guess clothing's the easiest thing to switch over there. It's all from Vietnam, Malaysia, India. You don't see a lot of Chinese clothing anymore. I think that's where the electronics, we know that Apple's trying to switch their supply chain over to India. That's a little easier said than done because their infrastructure is so lacking there. No, I think it's indicative of Russia's collapsing. All right. They are collapsing. I mean, look, this war is these wars, total wars that go on and on for month after month, are inflationary, and they are, they're injurious to the societal cohesion. And Russia's in big trouble now. I don't know if you could believe half the YouTubes saying that Ukraine is winning, but it's been almost 2 years. So the fact that they didn't knock off a second-rate army within a month is indicative of problems for Russia. And they had hundreds of thousands of people killed, brain drain, societal flight. Ukraine had it too. I mean, there's in Florida, the second most popular language is not going to be Spanish soon. It's going to be Russian, and the third most popular will be Ukrainian. I mean, that's how many people we're getting in here. So all of this portends for a major disaster for the West. And then energy, man, we go back to energy. It's like the EV revolution isn't going to save us in time, right?
Well, it was never going to save us. I mean, electric cars are much more fun to drive. So there were, we're going to have more fun. We're going to have more fun driving going forward.
Yeah.
But you don't actually. Electric cars are kind of like ethanol gasoline.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually use less energy to put ethanol in your gas tank because it takes a lot of energy to make ethanol. So you don't actually save any carbon
less energy
emissions or anything.
Less BTUs.
Yeah. And electric cars. To drive an electric car uses less energy, except that you're probably charging it from a coal-fired power plant, and the batteries take immense amounts of energy to create. So you got to drive your electric car for 8 years before the lines cross and you're actually saving anything. So, they were never going to save us, but they are much cooler technology. So I see why they're spreading, and I totally want one. But, a lot of the green stuff that we're doing now is either going to take a really long time to pay off, or will never pay off at all, like offshore wind. That's an idea.
Just kill the whales.
We'll kill the eagles if we put them in the plain states and out west, and we'll kill the whales if we put them off the Atlantic coast. So I think that it could easily be that wind power just goes away here pretty soon. That's a bold statement, I know, but I think that's possible.
Likely. I think it's likely. Hey, so we agree recession's on the way. Oh, by the way, you mentioned here credit card losses spiking and, savings rates now negative. Even foreclosures are going up. They're still at historically low rates, but foreclosures are going up, although I don't think they're ever going to foreclose like they did in the good old days during the GFC. But all these things kind of point to a recession and, in all likelihood, a bear market in the stock market, right?
Well, yeah, one of the things that kept us out of recession so far was that thing called excess savings, which is basically, we didn't go anywhere for 2 years. So our bank accounts grew because the government, we just cashed our stimmy checks and stayed home and watched Netflix. And so we had a lot of extra money in the bank. Well, that's being spent. The bottom 40% of the economy blew through their excess savings 6 months ago. And they're steeply in negative excess savings now. The middle 40 went zero or went negative just recently, and the top 20% of the economy in terms of wealth is headed for zero fast by that measure, by the excess savings measure. So that's all gone. That money has disappeared. Meanwhile, credit card debt is expanding like crazy, and student loan payments kick in shortly. So
and rates are higher.
Yeah. So you've got people who are already strapped. They already spent their savings trying to maintain their lifestyles, and now they got to start paying on their credit cards. So that's a recipe for plunging consumer spending. So we'll see if that plays out that way in 2024. But it doesn't seem like there's any more drivers for consumer spending going forward because. Other than wages, which is not nothing, these unionized workers who are suddenly making 10% more a year will probably spend some of that, but they're not a very big part of the economy yet. Private
ones
sector
that aren't
unions,
laid off.
Yeah, well, private sector unions
to pay for the wage increase.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, it's possible that we'll accelerate automation. These big companies are going, all right, we'll give you that 40% raise over the next 4 years. But meanwhile,
meet your replacement.
Really. Yeah, don't go down to the factory floor. You won't like what you see. Yeah. So it could well be that the trend that puts more money in people's pockets right now accelerates the trends of people being laid off going forward. We'll just see. But
you make an excellent point too, John.
Yeah.
Remember the fight for 15 when all these states bumped up the McDonald's fast food pay to 15 an hour. Do you remember what happened right after we saw the explosion of kiosks where people just ordered, and because the cost of capital was so low and the cost of labor differential was so high that it made sense to invest in these kiosks and get rid of the cashiers, just dump them, right?
Well,
what happened?
The food service and like Uber, the sharing economy, had become the unofficial social safety net for the United States. Basically, you got fired and you immediately started driving for Uber, or you got a job at some fast food place or a restaurant or whatever. And now those jobs are being automated away. I mean, self-driving cars are still a while away, but they literally have some of them on the road, right?
Yeah,
they're not doing too well, but
this is reality.
Yeah.
They're coming.
So 5 years from now, most deliveries will probably be by self-driving cars
or drones.
Yeah. And in restaurants, a huge amount of what happens now with people is going to be done by various kinds of robots and computer screens
Flippy?
and things like that.
Remember Flippy, the burger
robot?
He can flip like 1,000 hamburgers an hour and put buns on them and two beef patties, all cheese, special sauce on a sesame seed bun. He does all that, Flippy. You don't need. All we need is somebody who, like when Flippy drops something by accident, pick it up off the floor and clean it off and put it back in the Flippy's hopper to use it for another sandwich, right?
Yeah. So which means there's a huge societal thing coming at some point where we got to figure out, well, okay, if that's not the social safety net anymore, then what is, and then we'll be discussing UBI at that point.
What I think it is? A social safety net. I think it's like send them off to Crimea to fight for Crimea. That's the social safety. Get us into another war, right?
That's the standard empire strategies. You create what they call a reserve army of the unemployed. Yeah. People who are going to starve. And you say, come on in the military, 3 free meals a day and lots of exercise, and you get to wear a uniform. Chicks love a man in uniform. And that's where the army comes from. Because you're not going to get middle-class kids to volunteer to go to some shithole like Crimea or someplace.
No way.
That's just never going to happen. And that's in part why the military is falling so short of its recruitment targets right now. The wokeness is the other part. You also aren't going to get many guys to join a military where part of the job is to march around with a pride flag. With all due respect to everybody on every side of the social spectrum.
Yeah, that's not what the army is about. It's to break things and kill people. That's
exactly.
The purpose of the army.
So it's
not outreach to disenfranchised minorities here. Come on.
No, it really is not a social program, and it's got
now.
to and this is very non-PC, but the military has to have a male culture because large-scale violence is basically a guy thing. It's just what we're programmed for that. And if you're going to have a good army, it's got to be of guys for guys. And that doesn't mean there can't be lots of women in the military. It just means that they have to, be one of the boys. They've got to be able to hang with bros. That's just how it has to work.
It's a culture. It's a male culture of aggression, dominance, and basically using violent means to achieve a common goal.
Yeah,
and that's what may or may not be good for society as a whole, but that's what keeps the army going. It's like, and then when they're in the thick of battle, they don't care about like, oh, we got to get the flag up on that hill. It's their brothers, or they got to save their brothers. That's why they're doing it, So, man, it is so inculcated and so socially programmed into males when they go to the army. Luckily, we still have the South. So the South will hopefully save us, where gun culture is alive and macho is good. And
well, it could be that's part of the plan is to get as many guys from the South to join the army and then go get killed and depopulate the most conservative part of the country. That could be the left's plan for the military. We'll have to see.
They've done worse than this. Hey, so our favorite Democrat, I don't know if Assassination Attempt is too great, but it seems like somebody with guns and a lot of ammo tried to cross paths with RFK Jr. But the good news is the Biden administration still won't give him Secret Service protection.
And okay, two things. We still haven't heard that guy's story, right? Do we know why he was there or what he was there
we
for?
don't need to hear his story to know his story. He's a lone gunman. He probably is an anarchist. He probably hates the Kennedy family because of all the privilege, and he probably is a little insane as well. I mean,
we haven't heard his interview yet or his statement or anything. So why not? Why will he not? You think he's related to Ray Epps? Could that
maybe
be
Ray Epps? I think, I think he's related to the guy that shot James Garfield, right? An anarchist, nut job, disgruntled. Come to think of it, that kind of applies to Lee Harvey Oswald too. He was he was a misfit in the army. He was no good. I mean, he might have had some intelligence connections, but don't hold that against him. And by the way, did you hear that theory? Well, the magic bullet theory was that the bullet hit Kennedy, went all these different directions, and then went into Connolly because they found this pristine bullet on Connolly's stretcher. Well, the Secret Service agent who found that magic bullet said it was with JFK. He didn't want it to get misplaced. In other words, rabbit holed. So he himself put it on John Connolly, who was then the governor's, sorry about this, who was the governor of Texas. He really didn't want to be in that car. He fought tooth and nail to not have to get in the car with JFK for some reason. But in any event, the bullet was found on his stretcher, but it really was on Kennedy's stretcher, which thereby makes the whole magic bullet theory impossible. I mean, hey, if I was a Kennedy, I think I'd change my name and I would keep a lower profile, don't you?
Well, okay, we know the CIA killed JFK. I mean, that is a done deal. No need even to debate it anymore. That's just a given.
Tucker Carlson said so, and so did RFK Jr.
RFK did too. But anyhow, with RFK, Biden is not giving him Secret Service protection because he doesn't want to do anything to help a guy who might cost him the election. But what do you think it would do to Biden's popularity if he refused protection to RFK Jr. and then RFK Jr. got assassinated? Seems like that would be the worst political outcome that Joe Biden can imagine. Well, Joe Biden's handlers can imagine. Joe Biden doesn't. I don't think he imagines anything anymore. Yeah, but so it seems like they're making a really big political mistake or taking a big political risk by not giving Secret Service help to RFK Jr., but that's just my opinion strategically. Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Finally, even though we don't talk about politics because this is a family show, the WaPo Washington Post poll gave Trump a 10% lead over Biden, and then they said, oops, flawed methodology, doesn't count. We take it back.
Well, they published the research, the numbers and everything, but the headline said this is an outlier, So they disavowed their own methodology and results in the article where they reported on those results. But yeah, it said, and apparently they've had one other one like that just recently too. They had another 10% Trump lead in a poll over Biden. So there's a point at which, if you get enough of these, they stop being outliers and they start being the central conclusion of polling. So we'll see. But yeah, most polls have it a much closer election when it's head to head, which means Trump wins big because he doesn't have to win the popular vote. He just has to win in enough swing states. And if he gets close in the popular vote, he probably wins those swing states. So, a 50-50 tie between Biden and Trump means Trump wins easily in the Electoral College.
Correct my memory of this quote. I don't remember if it was Lenin who said it or if it was Stalin, but it's not who casts the votes that count. It's who counts the votes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the establishment in the US kind of has taken that to heart, right? So one funny thing about this is that, the Republicans feel like they got ripped off because the Democrats did a lot of things that Republicans didn't do, like vote harvesting and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and mail-in ballots. So now the Republicans are saying, well, if these are the rules,
We're
let's
going to
see if we
do it
can
too.
dominate. Yeah, and they'll be very good at it too, because the Republicans,
so.
they got a lot of boots on the ground out there, a lot of MAGA Trump people,
A lot
who
of people
will happily, yeah, because they feel like they got ripped off. So this is their chance to steal the election back now, and which means old folks' homes are going to be crawling with competing political operatives now. Going, Mrs. Smith, here, let me help you sign this voting ticket here. And so we're going to see this deluge. This will be the highest turnout election ever, because every vote will be stolen in some way. Yeah.
Everybody is going to vote, no matter what your body temperature is. Even
Exactly.
if it's close to room temperature, you're voting. When I first moved to Florida, and I forget, like, I passed by a nursing home, a nursing home, and there was a polling station in the nursing home. And I'm like, wait, like, so it's like they just set the Alzheimer's patients up and they say, like, I'm here to vote. Oh, but you voted already. Nah, I don't remember it. I'll vote again. You get them, you just keep them voting and voting early and often, right?
So
early voting and late voting, and nocturnal voting, and you've got what do you call that? Necropolis voting, right? So you got all these interest groups we didn't even know we had, right? The dead, they should get a say in things because they help get us where we are today, right? So they deserve a vote.
I think the exit polls are going to be hilarious this time around too, because 10% of the population will think they voted for Harry Truman or something.
Yeah.
That'll be the last name they remember from a
I'll bet Harry
presidential
Truman
election.
will be voting in this election, John.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll dig him up. He was he was a solid Democrat vote that they can definitely count on, right?
Oh God! We're laughing about this, but this is the end of democracy as we know it.
Well, John, can you name another country where the head dictator locks up the political opposition in jail, or basically tries them, does show trials for crimes both real and imagined? Can you think of another country that might do that? Like maybe that country that attacked Ukraine? They might be doing it. And Brazil, they're having a show trial now. I mean, this is the new trend, is just don't debate your opposition, indict them.
Yeah, we're in good company now, and
Banana Republic, man.
Yeah, banana republics. All the popular countries are banana republics these days. So yeah,
it's pathetic. But hey, so make sure you go over to John's Substack, Rubino.substack.com. Link in the show notes. Our site, financialsurvivalnetwork.com, will have a link to John's site there as well. And you can sign up for your free newsletter. John, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.